Think about the global artificial intelligence race as if you were building the ultimate supercomputer inside an old house. The United States has undoubtedly engineered the fastest processor in the world. It has the smartest software and the brightest engineers.
But there is a massive problem. The wiring in the house cannot take the load. Every time America tries to turn the supercomputer on, the breakers trip. Now look at China. China might not have the absolute fastest processor right now, but they own a house with brand new industrial-grade wiring and a massive power plant right in the backyard.
Welcome back to the Working Thesis. For 8 episodes, we have focused heavily on the grid constraints paralyzing the AI build-out in the United States. Today, we are looking outward to understand the geo-economics of compute.
When it comes to the chips, the United States leads. But when it comes to the raw, fundamental resource that actually runs artificial intelligence, the electricity itself, China holds a massive structural advantage. Today, we explore China's power edge.
Quick, honest note before we dig in. This is just 2 curious people thinking out loud, for learning and for fun. It's not investment advice and never a buy or sell call, so always do your own homework. To understand this dynamic, we need to look at the math. This is strictly a geo-economic observation. Both Elon Musk and NVIDIA's Jensen Huang have publicly flagged that the ultimate constraint on U.S. artificial intelligence won't be intelligence. It will be energy.
And when you look at the raw generation numbers, the imbalance is staggering. According to international energy data, China currently generates roughly twice as much total electricity as the United States.
Not only do they generate more power, but that power is significantly cheaper. Depending on the province and the subsidies, some Chinese data centers pay less than half the price for power compared to their American counterparts. In an industry where electricity is the largest operational expense, that is a massive structural tailwind.
And as we discussed back in episode 3, China doesn't suffer from grid fragmentation. They have a centralized national grid and thousands of kilometers of ultra-high voltage lines. Their electrons can travel across the country seamlessly. America's electrons are often stuck at the state border.
This creates a fascinating mirror image in the global AI race. The 2 superpowers are each limited by the other's greatest strength. The United States' AI ambition is bottlenecked by power, grid congestion, and permitting.
China's AI ambition is bottlenecked by chips. Because of strict Western export controls, Chinese tech companies cannot easily access the most advanced NVIDIA silicon. They have to rely on older chips, smuggled hardware, or domestic alternatives that are still catching up.
So you have America, with the best silicon on Earth, struggling to find a place to plug it in. And you have China, with massive power plants and a pristine grid, struggling to get their hands on the silicon.
But China isn't waiting for the chip war to resolve. They are leveraging their advantage today, and they are building infrastructure on a scale that almost defies belief to ensure their power dominance in the next decade.
To grasp the scale of China's energy ambition, you have to look at the Himalayas, specifically the Yarlung-Tsangpo River in Tibet. The Chinese government is developing what is known as the Medog, or Motuo, Dam.
This is not just a large dam. When completed, analysts estimate it will have a generating capacity of roughly 60 gigawatts. To put that in perspective, that is nearly 3 times the capacity of the Three Gorges Dam, which is currently the largest power station on Earth.
It is projected to generate roughly 300 terawatt-hours of electricity per year. That is roughly equivalent to the entire annual electricity consumption of the United Kingdom, all from a single infrastructure project deep in the mountains.
The estimated cost is between $137 and $170 billion, with groundbreaking slated for July 2025 and the first units generating power in the early 2030s. It will not solve the immediate 2026 AI crunch, but it guarantees an unimaginable ocean of clean baseload power for the next decade.
But as we know, generating power in the mountains doesn't help if your data centers are in the cities. China's solution to this is a national strategy, literally translated as Eastern Data, Western Computing.
They are building massive compute clusters in the resource-rich, cooler Western provinces and connecting them to the Eastern tech hubs using those ultra-high voltage transmission lines.
They are physically reshaping the geography of compute to match the geography of their power generation. Now, it is important to note that a mega project like the Medog Dam carries significant geopolitical and environmental weight.
Downstream nations like India and Bangladesh have raised serious concerns about water security, and the region is seismically active. But from a pure domestic energy standpoint, it illustrates a level of centralized infrastructure commitment that the fragmented U.S. grid simply cannot match.
This massive energy surplus leads to a very provocative geo-economic theory. Jensen Huang recently observed that an AI factory takes electricity and data in and pushes tokens out.
If you follow that logic, artificial intelligence is essentially a mechanism for exporting electricity. If your country has the cheapest, most abundant power on Earth, you can convert that power into AI tokens and export those tokens globally over the internet.
There is a very clear historical precedent for this. Before China banned the practice in 2021, the country controlled roughly 65 to 75% of the global Bitcoin hash rate. Why? Because Bitcoin mining naturally gravitates to wherever electricity is cheapest.
AI training and inference follow the exact same physics. Today, we are seeing Chinese AI models like DeepSeek offering API access at prices roughly 90% cheaper than top-tier Western models. Some open-source Chinese models are capturing 15 to 30% of global usage simply because they are incredibly capable and shockingly cheap to run.
If the country with the cheapest power can dominate the token market, the implications are massive. Rather than exporting manufactured goods on cargo ships, China could become the factory of the mind, exporting intelligence over fiber optic cables.
The theory suggests that price-sensitive developers all over the world, particularly in the global south, will naturally route their workloads to the cheapest provider. Every time a chatbot answers a question in Brazil or Indonesia, it might be powered by a river in Tibet.
It is a compelling narrative. China powers the world's AI because energy economics always win. But before we accept that conclusion, we have to look at the counter-arguments, because the reality of AI is much more complex than the reality of Bitcoin mining.
The first major hole in the China exports tokens theory has to do with how these models are released. Many of the most successful Chinese models like Qwen and DeepSeek are released with open weights.
This means anyone can download the model and run it themselves. And what we are seeing is that Western developers are downloading these brilliant Chinese models and then running them on American cloud infrastructure like AWS or Microsoft Azure.
So the intelligence was engineered in China, but the actual power being burned to run the inference, the token generation, is happening on Western grids. The open source nature of the models essentially leaks the export value.
However, that leak is incomplete. Because China-hosted API access is still vastly cheaper due to their domestic power costs, a massive amount of non-sensitive, price-driven, high-volume workloads still route directly back to servers physically located in China.
The second counter-argument is trust. When you mine a Bitcoin, it is just math. No one cares where the math happened. But AI involves data. It involves corporate secrets, personal information, and national security.
Western enterprises are incredibly hesitant to send sensitive corporate data to servers located in China due to geopolitical tensions and data sovereignty concerns. In fact, many governments are actively banning it.
Every major nation right now is pushing for sovereign AI. France wants its AI run in France. Japan wants its AI run in Japan. They don't want to rely on an American model, and they certainly don't want to rely on Chinese compute infrastructure.
This trust barrier acts as a massive tariff on the export of Chinese tokens. No matter how cheap the electricity is, if a Western bank isn't legally allowed to ping the API, that demand will stay domestic.
The final counter-argument brings us back to the Bitcoin parallel. When China banned commercial Bitcoin mining, the industry didn't die. The machines simply packed up and moved abroad.
Digital work goes wherever power is both cheap and welcome. If the U.S. grid remains blocked, the AI industry won't necessarily concede the token market to China. They will simply build their data centers in the Middle East, in Scandinavia, or anywhere else with stranded energy.
Capital is fluid. If the U.S. cannot build transmission lines fast enough, American hyperscalers will just export their capital to regions that can, retaining control of the tokens while outsourcing the power generation.
So where does this leave us? Is China's power edge a total game changer, or is it neutralized by chip constraints and geopolitics?
The reality is a balanced verdict. China's energy advantage is a massive, real, structural tailwind. But the maximalist idea that China will power the world's AI is heavily throttled by the semiconductor embargo and the global demand for data sovereignty.
Instead, the most realistic channel for China's power advantage is twofold. First, it gives them an incredible domestic token economy. They can deploy AI across their own massive industrial and consumer base at a fraction of the cost it takes in the West.
And second, they will dominate the price-sensitive markets. In regions of the global south, where cost is the primary deciding factor and U.S. data sovereignty isn't a priority, Chinese APIs will win the volume game hands down.
The global chessboard is set. The U.S. is fighting the grid. China is fighting the chip ban. Both superpowers are pouring hundreds of billions of dollars into infrastructure just to ensure they have enough juice to train the next frontier model.
But let's say you win. Let's say you get the permits, you connect the gas turbine, you build the dam, and you finally deliver the power to the data center. Your problems still aren't over.
Because when you deliver 100 megawatts of power to a room full of silicon, that power doesn't just disappear, it turns into heat. And if you don't remove that heat instantly, your multi-billion-dollar supercomputer will physically melt.
Next time on the Working Thesis, we look at the last mile. We are going inside the data center to explore the plumbing of AI, the death of air cooling, and the companies fighting to keep the machine from catching fire. We tackle cooling in episode 10. See you then.
That's a wrap for today. Thanks for thinking it through with us. We're just testing our theses out loud, one day at a time.
Catch you on the next one. Stay curious and tell us where we're wrong.